Party issues, everybody's got some issues. Let me bring you some tissues. Episode 29.5. Alright, loves, we're going to start with the Democrats and their issues, because God knows they've got issues. There are a couple of topics that I don't have slides for that I am going to touch on. But the reason I don't have slides for them is because when you're doing your Unit 5 projects, these are the topics I don't want you to focus on. So what I'm trying to say is that for your Unit 5 projects, I want you to focus on the topics that I have made slides for. The other topics are equally as important. They are very important topics. However, they're not what I want you to focus on. So let's start with a topic that's not on a slide. Abortion. Democrats, generally speaking, are fairly pro-choice. That means, well, I hope you know what that means, but that means that the choice is with the woman. They favor contraceptive education to prevent the necessity of abortion. So that means they would rather me in school teach you about using condoms and birth control than people going out and having abortions. But they do believe in the choice of having an abortion. Now, the environment. The environment is a very important issue for the Democrats. And you'll notice something different about this episode. There's a lot of words on these slides, and that's because, once again, I said it's an optional episode. I'm not forcing you to do this, so if you want to just write down what's on there, you're pretty much getting what I'm saying. Anyways, environment. They support stronger environmental laws and protection of nature. That means they care about the world around us and the nature around us. They push for clean air and water because, well, have you seen that LA smog? That's nasty. I don't want to be breathing that in. Well, the Democrats believe that I shouldn't have to. And they're pushing for cleaner air and cleaner water. They support funding for preservation, meaning to save and keep things the way they are. Examples, the Everglades in Florida or the Redwoods in California. Have any of you ever been up to the Redwoods in California? Like, they're up in like the central and northern California. Actually, if you've ever been to UC Santa Cruz, the campus itself is in the redwood forest. It is so cool, and they are so pretty, and they should be preserved. Now, should the government pay for that preservation, or should private people do it? I don't know how I feel about that yet, but it is true. The Democrats support funding for preservation of things like the Everglades and the Redwoods. The next issue we're going to talk about is gun control. Well, before we get to gun control, let's talk about gay rights. Gay rights. The Democrats feel that gays should be protected from workplace discrimination and hate crimes. They should be given equal work benefits like more traditional families. And they largely opposed President Bush's proposal to ban gay marriage through a constitutional amendment. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. President Bush tried to propose a constitutional amendment. Remember how difficult it is to amend the Constitution? Well, President Bush tried to do so, and he tried to ban gay marriage. Now, regardless of how you feel about that, a constitutional amendment's a big deal. We talked about how difficult it is. And it's no surprise that that didn't go through. And that's because it was a constitutional amendment. Nothing more, nothing less. All right, gun control. This is an issue that is very important to us in this day and age because we hear about shootings, at least twice a month now? And so this is going to be a topic of discussion during all debates and all throughout the campaigns. Gun control. Democrats are strong advocates for gun control. They support both the Brady bill and the assault weapons ban. Now, let me tell you about the Brady bill. So, the Brady bill was passed in 1993, and it states, it mandated, means it made sure that federal background checks were being done on firearm purchasers, so people who wanted to buy guns in the United States. It also imposed a 5-day waiting period on the purchase. So it was enacted in 93 and it was pretty much taken out in 1998 when a different system was put into place. And that different system is called the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. So it's not like they took it away. You still have a background check done. It's just a little bit more instantaneous. So once again, Democrats generally are in favor for stronger gun control and stronger regulations on being able to buy guns. They're not here saying that you shouldn't buy a gun if you want to. It's just that you should only be able to buy certain types of guns and go through background checks if you want to. And not that you want to go through a background check, but if you want to buy the gun. Next topic that's always on people's mind is healthcare. Democrats generally push for more healthcare funding. Medicare, Children's Health Insurance Program, what we know as the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. They are in favor of programs to ensure that all Americans have quality and affordable health care. They really want it to become 100% government funded at some point, but we're not quite there yet. But that's where you see the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare coming into play. Miss Seth's favorite issue, foreign policy. Oh, I do love foreign policy. So, Democrats are generally much more supportive of international agencies than Republicans are. They support NATO and the UN. They are more skeptical, or they were more skeptical, of the Bush administration's rush into war than the Republicans were. They are very skeptical and were very skeptical of the handling of the reconstruction of Iraq. So they are much more for what we call diplomacy, which is using your words and talking things out rather than going to war. It's not that they don't see the need for military action. They just aren't as, ready to jump on the gun all the time. Pun intended. I think Carl Azuz would be proud of that pun. All right, next up, education. Always important, education. More funding for struggling schools is necessary, according to the Democrats. Which makes sense, right? Schools who don't perform as well should get more money because then they can get better teachers and better resources and all that. If a school's doing well, then do they need to get as much money? Maybe. Because if they're doing well, then clearly what they're doing is working, so they should be rewarded with more money. Who knows? There's so many sides to these stories. But then we also have they are highly critical of the No Child Left Behind Act, which has been very underfunded. And they believe that tax money should not be used on religious schools, only on public, non-secular, meaning non-religious schools. Okay, a quick note before we get to the economy. Social Security and welfare and the Democrats. So, for Social Security, Democrats generally are very much in favor of it. They believe it's a fundamental right of Americans, and they believe it's the best way to protect and maintain federal government. The best way to protect it, meaning Social Security, is to maintain federal government control. They do not want to privatize Social Security. As far as welfare goes, they highly support increased child care for welfare recipients so they are more able to work steady jobs. And they support funding for job training so recipients will be more competitive in the job market. So, in other words, they are very supportive of welfare. They believe it really does work, and it's a really good way for the government to go. Moving into the economy, they believe that they should be creating jobs by ending tax loopholes for corporations and providing tax cuts to small businesses. They also believe that they can put Americans to work by rebuilding our infrastructure. Infrastructure being roads, bridges, etc., etc. All right, let's move on to our Republicans and the Republican issues, tissues needed. Just like the Democrats, the Republicans have so many issues. Oh my Lord. All right, let's talk about abortion before we get to the environment. Republicans generally are pro-life and anti-choice. That means they prefer funding go towards marriage education and abstinence-only campaigns. They have tried many, many, many times to pass statutes that would allow prosecution of acts that harm the fetuses, meaning they would like to be able to prosecute you if you have an abortion, or the clinic you went to, gave you an abortion. I don't really know how that works, but you know what I'm trying to say. All right, the environment. So they favor the exploration of all resources in the United States for energy production and have generally opposed looking for more environmental friendly power alternatives. So they're all about drilling for oil. They love their oil, but they're all about exploring U.S. resources. And that's because they don't want to spend the money out in the Middle East. They pushed for oil drilling in Anwar, the building of more nuclear power plants, the shift towards the use of coal, and have submitted proposals that would weaken the Clean Air Act. It sounds kind of shady and like they're trying to destroy the world. It is shady, don't get me wrong, it totally is. I said shady, not the bad word, by the way, right there. I know it sounded like I said a bad word, but it was shady, like Slim Shady, like the real Slim Shady. Yeah. Okay, back to the Republicans in this environment. They're a lot more money-centered, and so if they can save money by using U.S. resources, then that's what they're going to do, even when it comes to the environment. Before we move along to gun control, let's talk about gay rights. Generally speaking, Republicans are against giving gays equal rights in the eyes of the law. And this is because they don't really believe that sexual preference should be given special legal protection or standing in law. They generally oppose the idea of gay marriage and seek to define marriage as a union between a man and a woman. And they supported the amendment to the Constitution that defined marriage. There's no amendment like that, but they wanted to pass one, right? President Bush was a Republican, and he wanted to pass that. A lot of the reason that they feel this way about gay rights is because of their religious beliefs, and that fuels a lot of it. Sometimes it's just the way they feel, and it is what it is, right? Gun control. Let's move to gun control. They favor allowing the sale of firearms to proceed more easily and with fewer safety precautions. They fully believe in their Second Amendment rights to bear arms, and they don't want anyone getting in the way of it. They oppose any new gun control laws, and they fought the regulation and banning of assault weapons. Okay, healthcare. They believe that healthcare should work within the free market system where competition will lower the cost of healthcare, not federal government involvement. They want it to be privatized so that the companies can use free market and market competition to lower the prices. Okay, foreign policy. They have brushed aside international organizations in favor of unilateral policy of preemption. That means that they want to take action and they want to be in charge. The Bush Doctrine supported preemptive invasion when necessary to protect the security of the United States. And they argue that the use of American military force is essential for keeping the world safe for democracy. Like I said earlier, they are not gun shy. They are ready to roll. All right. Education. They supported both No Child Left Behind program and the school vouchers program. They favor school vouchers because they think by giving students more educational options, including religious schooling, a competitive market will be created. So they want more schools to become competitive, and by creating more schools, there will be more competition. They argue that public schools will be forced to improve in order to retain students. which is kind of true. And that picture's like right in the way of that. The little part says argue that schools will be forced to improve in order to retain students. This is where, because of No Child Left Behind, you will have seen a lot of charter schools like ours, Nova, were created. And that was because that was to give students like yourselves or your parents a choice in where you went to school. If you weren't going to Nova, you'd be going to your home school, whatever that might be. It might be is Mendez is that a high school? I don't know if that's a high school or middle school. Okay, let's go with the ones I definitely know. Santa Ana. Oh my God, why am I blanking on all of the high schools around us right now? Okay, well, you know what your homeschool would have been if you weren't coming to Nova, right? But your parents or you chose to come to Nova. And that's because, because of No Child Left Behind. These newer schools were created so that other schools would step up their game and improve their academics. Some of them did, some of them not so much. All right, before we get into the economy, again, let's go over Social Security and welfare. So basically, the Republicans are in favor of privatizing Social Security. They believe that if you want Social Security, you should pay into it yourself, and not everyone should have to do that. As far as welfare goes, they favor increasing the mandatory work week for those receiving government assistance. They think that if you're getting government help, you should be earning that government help. They want to cut down on welfare because they think the government shouldn't be as involved. They think that if you are cut off earlier, you will have to work harder and you will find a way to support yourself. All right, the economy. They want less government control over American industries. They want the industries to be able to do what they need to do and do it however they're going to. They are all about pro-growth policies and sensible regulation, because they believe that these can help private companies to innovate and create jobs and enable our economy to thrive. A really big argument of the Republicans is that if we keep taxing these big companies, they won't be able to hire more people. If we cut back on their taxes, then they're going to be able to hire people because they'll be able to save money on taxes and put that towards people's salaries. Their big statement from the GOP website is the best anti-poverty program is a job. So our focus is on creating opportunity, not dependency. They want to create jobs by letting big companies do what they do best. Now, I'd like to put a disclaimer to this. I probably should have put this disclaimer at the very beginning of this episode, but I'm going to give it to you at the end. Many of these viewpoints are very, very drastic. I gave you like very Republican people and very Democratic people and how they feel on things. And so it might have villainized one party over the other, in your opinion. And that might be it. There's not necessarily anything wrong with you villainizing one party over the other. Generally, that's what people do. But just know that most people are somewhere more in the middle, where they agree with some issues on both sides. And that's okay. You can be somewhere in the middle and lean a little bit more to the Republican side or lean a little bit more to the Democratic side. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being a hardcore Republican. There's nothing wrong with being a hardcore liberal. If you know what you stand for and that's what it is, then that's what it is. We in this class are not going to judge you for it. I'm not going to judge you for it. Your peers are not going to judge you for it. And that's fine that you feel that way. Just know that people in the outside world who may not be as kind to you. But as far as our class goes, that's totally fine. And like I said, this may have seemed like it villainized one party over the other, but in no way does it reflect my opinions on politics, because you will not know what party I'm part of until you graduate.